This is an interview with Alfred de Vynck. The date is July 16th, 1994, and we're in Montreal. Good morning, Alfred.
Good morning, ma'am.
Thank you very much for taking time to talk with me today about your involvement in the profession of landscape architecture in Canada. I wonder if we can begin with a little bit of background information, where you were born and when?
Brussels, Belgium. I'll give you the date.
Sure. 1930.
16.
What?
In 1930, yeah.
Yes, and what was the actual birth date?
November 16, Scorpion.
November 16th, 1930. And did you do your schooling, your early schooling in Brussels?
In Belgium, eh?
And then proceeded to do what when you were through high school? What kind of opportunity?
High school. I choose architecture because my grandfather was an architect.
Oh, was he?
He did the, his name is Brouwers in Amsterdam.
How would you spell that?
B-R-O-U. Brouwer. W-W-W. Brouwer.
Yes.
Brouwer.
And he did what?
Well, he built the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. Concertgebouw is the music concert hall in Amsterdam, the big building just across the thing.
Yes.
Brouwer's name is on the thing. My grandmother.
Yeah.
So my mother always said, to become an architect. I said, okay, I'll start going to an architectural school. In 1948, indeed, I went to l'Académie des Beaux-Arts, Beaux-Arts School, belonged to the city of Brussels, and stayed there for a year and a half or something. I had to leave because in 1948, after the war, things became a little sour for a lot of people. Beaux-Arts schooling is more artwork, artistic, not technical.
Yes.
La vie, ink, monumental rosaces, Beaux-Arts, which is the opposite of the modern art of Holland in 1920, of course. 48 years were difficult, but I stayed in school till 50.
Did you, during that time then, you were not involved in the war? You weren't part of you were conscripted or?
No, too young for that.
You were too young.
But so I remember when the Germans invaded Belgium, I was in the school looking through my window, and I saw the tanks coming in, and then 5 minutes later, before the Germans came in, I saw the British leaving and the Germans following in a half an hour, like in a film.
Yeah, my goodness. So that left the country. Then
we were occupied. Yeah, we were occupied through the whole year after till 1944, 45. Yeah. I was 15 then, and I like the Americans, of course, the way they chew, the way they walk, the way they carry their guns, the way their uniforms were made. So I'm part of this la philosophie américaine, which we call here, very Americanized. That's all we saw, American films. The Best Year of Our Lives, The Green Years,
And that definitely colors how your values.
Yes, it affects your education, I think.
Yes.
All this. Maybe for you, not for me. If I listen, what did I say?
Sounds great. So then, with that perspective, with that the end of the war, and things were not as buoyant as they could have been in Belgium, you went to university and you studied for a couple of years.
Well, it's not a university. An academy is actually, it was a course of 7 years.
Oh.
7 years architecture. So I went, they call it, this is something that I actually have talked to even Chanazix in the days, if he remembers, saying, why don't you get a preparatory? Young people, and Quebec did it with the CEGEPs. When you're 12, 15, you go right away in it already. You get more chemistry for nurses or something. We got more in design, drawing, pencils, cubes, cylinders with graffiti, what you call black chalk, graphite, and having a lot of fun. That was our entrance exam too at the school.
Now, would that have been like part of your high school?
Yeah, and that's what it is. That's what it is. It's focus in architecture. They call it Beaux-Arts.
Yes.
And that was actually nearly 3 years. The year and a half was actually in architecture already. So I had still 4 years to go. But the reason why actually I stopped, because my father, in 1948, I think it's 49, I had to go to work. There was a crisis. There was a crisis like now in the crisis of 1980 and the 1990s and depression, kind of depression. It was a very hard times.
Yes. Because
public works was not called public works. It was called Ministère de la Reconstruction. All Europe had to be reconstructed. And that's where the landscape architect got involved into, like le plan vert. So that's many years later. But there was a movement of shall we do the same mistakes that we've done before the war, or shall we better our world? So the first shopping center I saw was Rotterdam. If you really want to see, that's what Douglas Harper once said, he says, if you really want to see, he'll say to me, he said, what really landscape architecture is about, go to Holland. The moment you're in France or in things are more busy.
So was there a philosophical base in Europe after the war that dealt with landscape architecture?
We didn't know what it was, landscape architecture. It was architecture, period. But in the making, in the years to come, later, much later, in 1952, I went in the army. And in the army, they said, okay, you can go to school. And I went to l'École d'Urbanisme in Brussels. And in that school, there was a fellow who was actually many times president of the IFLE, René Pécher. René Pécher is very well known in Europe. I mean, he's the landscape architect of the Queen, England, the Queen of Belgium, and the King. He does all the big thing for the nobility in Europe. He's a man of great. He came once in class and he said, "I'm sorry, I cannot talk too much, but I just came from Switzerland skiing, and that is."
A great image to see.
There's lots of urbanists are from that school, like Léon Pugatz, who worked with LeGeyt, where Douglas Harper. There was a movement. L'école d'urbanisme, that was La Cambre, l'école de La Cambre, was actually a school of young generation. We're going to do things more modern. The gardens are flamboyant. The most beautiful gardens are in La Cambre. They're as beautiful as the gardens designed by Le Nôtre, n'est-ce pas? And there are many books, unknown probably to you because they've never been, but this is part of my proposal that I want to show a little bit what's going on in Belgium. And because I think what we're going through now there is something there.
Where was that school again? I'm sorry.
La Cambre. L'Abbaye de La Cambre. It used to be a monastery in the 12th century, and it turned out to be, it was very old. We were like nuns. Don't forget one thing too, in Belgium, the best architects are actually nuns. They're priests, monastery.
Yes,
Moines.
Oh
yeah, they were the great, they read the Bible. I mean, just look around here, all the big churches and flamboyant, Leonardo da Vinci and whatever. Michelangelo, great architects.
Yeah. So you, in your military service then, you were able to go back to school, and you spent how long?
Nearly 2 years.
2 years.
Something that was a disappointment. You see, in Belgium, the military service was actually 1 year, but we were under United Nations, Americans, and the Americans had 2 years to serve, so they made 2 years. And it was a socialist country. It was actually a liberal country or Catholic. 2 years. While I was in the army, serving my term, 2 years was long. He said, okay, the socialists came in and says, we'll cut it down to a year. He said, what are you going to do? I served already 21 months. Well, as as a benediction, you can go to school, free and on us. So that was, I took the course of urbanism. And René Péchet was a landscape architect, and he opened my eyes.
So that is, I was going to say.
So that's what I say in my parcours.
Uh-huh.
C'est là qu'il s'intéressera aux problèmes urbains et particulièrement à l'art des jardins. It's there that I became very much interested in the urban problems, reconstruction, and l'art des jardins. So I decided l'art des jardins. But not fully, I couldn't work there because most of the landscape architects were landscape contractors in Belgium. Only a few like René Péchet, Fritz, Van der Zwalm, they were gentle people, you know, they were people that had high, you know, Dunnington Grub type, maybe. Can I say that?
Sure. I need a video camera here. We're missing what these people really look like when we can't get that on camera.
And so these people were
Influential?
very much so.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, cool. You make out something about it.
So you did your service and you did the year where was that? Was that that wasn't considered a university? Or?
Well, they're university is for engineers, doctors, and you know. But a surveyor doesn't go to university. But here, yes, here you go. I think you have to be a plumber. You go to university to become a plumber. I mean, there's university, you know, psychiatrist, psychologist, everything is university here, you know. But over there, the university is only for les professions libérales. Professeur, well, architects, engineers, doctors, notaries, and lawyers. That's it. And then after that come the technical schools. Highly technical schools like Pierre Bourque, the future mayor, if he's going to be mayor in Montreal, he was the director of the Botanical Garden. He went to school in Belgium in a technical school. He became ingénieur technicien, and not ingénieur. He came with his diploma to Canada, and they told him you cannot use the word ingénieur. You're technical, you're high technical, you're not ingénieur. You can call yourself whatever you want.
So you did that training, and then were there work opportunities for you?
Over there?
Yes.
Of course. Of course not. There was. Not in landscape architecture, that's for sure. To make a living, you had to go to work for architects. So I worked in an architectural... I worked for the government. And I worked in Le Cadastre. I think I say it somewhere. À la fin de son service militaire, at the end of my service militaire, I go to the Ministère des Grands Levés et Plans Généraux en tant que géomètre topographe. Though there was no opportunity for architectural drafting, because we're all draftsmen. They put me as a topographer. What was I doing? Dealing with land, measuring on land. That also opened my eyes. Reconnaissance. Go and see, measuring houses and say, my God, what's happening? Why is this crooked? Why is this, you know? You see all the mistakes, all the lacunes, they call it. That did that for about 6 months. And then, for one reason or another, we were young, 23, 24. It was two things, or Canada or the Congo.
The Belgian Congo.
Belgian Congo.
Exactly.
Don't say that. There's no Congolese here. Call it Zaire.
I remember it as the Belgian Congo.
Yeah, okay. I still, yeah. So, I was ready to go to the Congo, but finally there was Kamina in the beginning. I had to resign again in the army for 3 years, and I said, Nani, we shall not do that. And then it's Canada. A very nice fellow by the name of Mitchell at the embassy of Canada. I came in here, in that waiting room, he asked me, where you want to go? He says, I would like to go to Canada. What is your profession? That was just a little guy behind the counter. Yeah. I said, well, I'm an architecte dessinateur, topographe. That's what's written on my passport. Yeah. And he says, ah oui, venez avec moi. There were 5 people sitting there. They came from Italy, miners probably, I don't know. And for one reason or another, I waited for it, and I looked at a few books about Canada, beautiful country, and they give booklets there. You see, come to Canada. Monsieur Meunier va vous recevoir. Monsieur Mitchell va vous recevoir. Déjà, I went to his office. It was a very old building right on Rue Royale, Royal Street. Went upstairs, sit in his office. He says, bonjour. He gives my name. He says, my God, what a research for an immigrant. Vous voulez partir au Canada? You want to go to Canada? I said, yes. What are you doing? And after 10 minutes of what I said, the polyvalent, all these things I've done, architect, topographe, you are, huh? And then he said, you know, actually me, I'm here, an immigration officer. He says, actually, I am an agronomist. I can't find any work in Canada. There was no work for agronomists, and he's an agronomist.
Yeah.
Many agronomists, surveyors an agronomist too. So he says, when you like to go? I said, already? He says, you can have your immigration visa today. I said, no kidding. You got a passport? I said, here it is. He stamped right away. He said, now you have to pass your exam. He became my best friend. A year later, I saw him. He married a Belgian woman. After the war, these people were so wonderful that Canada for me was already a step. You know, it was, you know, I didn't have to wait. I had no number, nothing.
Yeah.
I went. And that was on my birthday, the 16th of November, 1953. A sad day, actually.
Yeah. What was sad about it?
My father didn't believe it, that I was going to leave him.
Yeah. Were the only
That
child?
was my, he looked at the window and he looked at me and he says, I'll help you go. So he gave me some money. I went. That was La Big Aventure. April the 3rd, I left from Rotterdam, arrived in New York on the 13th. As a young man, I spoke good English.
Yes, and you do today.
And matter of fact, sometimes they said, "Oh, I thought you were one of us, you know, Americans that were on the boat." People that went to the kibbutz and came back from. That was the time the kibbutz 1954 too. A couple of Americans. He says, "Are you an architect?" "Oh, me too. I'm an architect in New York. I'm an architect and designer. I'm not an architect. I'm a designer." I said, "What's the difference?" And I found out much later what it was. New York. Go up to Toronto, Niagara Falls, stayed around there maybe a week. Went to see friends of my mother that she knew after the war. My mother was in Indonesia.
Oh.
My uncle is also an architect in Sumatra. She's Dutch. I thought it's Flemish.
Oh.
I have no brothers and sisters, so you know, you can.
So then when you left, that was even much.
It was very difficult.
I was going to ask if you were the first child to have left, but you were the only child.
That's right, and that was hard on them.
Yes.
But my mother helped me a lot. She says, "You go, go. Va l'aventure. What are you going to do here? Nothing. Stay, work for a ministry, become a civil servant. None in our family are civil servants. My father wanted me to become military. Just think about it, your pension, all that. But that's all they do, civil servants. They think about their pension. I never thought about it. That's why I'm poor now. I'm glad that the Quebec government took money from me in a way. So I have La Ronde du Québec, which is the Canada pension plan. So I can survive a little bit until I be 65, I guess, if there's still money left there. Anyway, that's not the point. The New York, Toronto, and then Montreal. I arrived here in Montreal on Easter. Can we go?
Oh yes, yeah.
Easter, coming Easter, and there's a lot of details in there, but what I want to say is that when I went to across the street was the Standard Life, Sun Life, the big building. That was a huge building for me. New York. I mean, this is a village, I said. It's impossible. This is our highest building, beautiful building. I went to see the consul, Belgian consul, to present myself. I had a letter from someone that gave me an introduction. And the fellow downstairs, the fellow that was, "Oh, you Belgian, we like Belgians. Why? Because we were liberating you and all that." And conversation, it was such a nice welcome, you know. He said, where are you staying? I said, "I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to stay." I would never do a thing like that again at my age. But kids do that.
Sure.
I'm supposed to meet Madame Van Meldegem, that works for the General Council of Belgium. He says, but it's Easter, you know that? I said, I didn't know there was Easter. Easter 1954. Everything is closed. I'm glad I spoke to you, he says. So I went to see her, and I was, that's too much detail, but I was welcome in their neighbors. They welcomed me. They were Belgium too. They opened my doors. I mean, the reception in Canada was just terrific. I didn't even have to go to an hotel. You can stay with us until you'll find some work. And I'm afraid you will find work.
Yeah.
The next day, Easter was over. I went to see McGill University Architectural. I went to see John Bland. Bland, yes. B-L-A-N-D. The Dean of Architecture. I went to see him. And after half an hour of chatting, he says, no problem, you can come in here. You still have 3 years. We have a program, 4 years in architecture. You can go right in second year with what you have. So 3 years, not so bad. So I'll think about it. Then I asked tuition, this and that. I said, maybe can I do it? And they gave me some kind of a tip. School, it was attached to the engineering, and it still is the engineering faculty. No point about landscape architecture. Then I went to the school of l'École des Beaux-Arts. Here, the French Canadians were not university graduates. They were all Beaux-Arts, architectes des Beaux-Arts, Beaux-Arts, like Brussels. The English were engineers.
There's an important cultural distinction there.
That's exactly, and I think that's interesting.
I think it is too.
For you make your
Yes.
Architects in Quebec, no school in Quebec City, only in Montreal. McGill, engineering to become architect. Beaux-Arts, School of Beaux-Arts School, with the spirit of the Beaux-Arts. They did the same thing as us. Charcoal, this. McGill, technical.
And the 2H pencil.
Absolutely, exactly, a 2H.
Or 2B.
Like a nail.
2B pencil, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, 2H.
I'm sitting there, I'm going back home, and the next day, I go to see Monsieur, the director at the time was Charles Bois. It's a funny little joke, Charles Bois. Charles Bois. Charles Bois is Charles drinks. Charles drinks. And he eats drinks. He was once at the Order of Architects. He couldn't talk. He was ridiculized. He had it up to now. But the most interesting part is, I don't know if I should say that, but I think it is. I was in a restaurant the day after, and the woman that served me says, "D'où venez-vous? Where you come from?" I said, "From Belgium." I said, "Oh. Mais ici, c'est anglais." Ah. And then she opened my eyes and talking 10 minutes, she says, "There's two distinctions. Louis Saint Laurent, east, west. Where are you going to stay?" I said, "I saw already the difference. They eat differently, they walk differently, they talk differently." And I spoke English to her. She says, "Mais je suis canadienne-française." And I spoke French with her. She says, "Vous avez un magnifique accent. Vous parlez l'anglais?" And an hour later, I saw the consul, and the consul says, openly, "You will, if you want a job here, you have to work for the English. Don't work for the French. They have no work in French, unless you are a Catholic." And I saw the difference, and I became scared. I went back to the school, and the business school says, "Un instant, Monsieur Morancy, Charles Bois, the director of school, said, I'm going to introduce you to a Belgian guy by the name of Jacques Van Meldegem." Van Meldegem was an architect. He gave courses there. And he says, "Come for supper. You coming, we're leaving." Already, 1954, he says, "I got good reason." He told me the reasons, but I don't think this is the purpose of our conversation. He gave me the idea that don't stay in Canada. Go to Toronto. Go work in New York. Go anywhere. There's nothing in Montreal. I said, "Is it that bad?" He said, and then 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, he says, "You know what you could do with what you did?" I gave him my certificates, papers, and all that. He says, "Go and see a fellow by the name of Louis Perron. He's hungry for draftsmen. he's been doing that since 1940, after the war, during the war. He cannot find a draftsman that stays with him. Maybe you'll like it. You did work with René Pécher in Belgium. You're a topographer. It's good. You know land. You understand what grading is. Maybe you'll be it. I call him up. The next day I go and see him in his office in Saint Laurent. He was the only landscape architect in the telephone book anyway. Louis Perron. 1954. And I have the proof of this because that's part of my, I got it all I went to Bell Telephony archives. I have an old story on that. That's my second dream, my famous book I'm going to make or something. Fini?
No, it's okay. I thought it's...
And he says to me, I came, and he says to me, you look European, because I had a little hat. It was still cold, April. Where do you stay? I say I stay in Saint Laurent, with the people from the council. I said, okay. So it is 9 o'clock. Would you make me a drawing as a test to get in? He was already. I said, sure. So he showed one of his plans, a sketch, and I put my paper and I sketched it the best I could. I was finished at 4 o'clock. I left. The next day, oh yeah, he came in at 4 o'clock and he says, oh, you did that? I said, yeah. I was still very European, very straightforward, polite, monsieur, and, those days you say monsieur today, now they say, hi, Charles, Charlie or something. It was manners in Saint Laurent, a beautiful home there. And he looked at my drawings, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I couldn't get an answer from him. And then he looked at me and he says, you can start tomorrow morning. We'll make a good canine out of you. That's all he said. Yeah. He didn't say, I'm going to make a good landscape architect out of you. I'm going to make a good canine out of you. So, and then we sat down, we decided the fee. At the time it was $1. I made 50 cents in Belgium. So he says, isn't it great? You make $1 here. People would make actually $1.50 here at the time. Yeah. Draftsman. $1 an hour. And I managed to go in a pension. He was a Rotary man. Yes. He was also connected with some politicians. He had a lot of parks to do in Saint Laurent. That's where it started. That's how he had a lot of work. And I stayed 4 years with him. I was his designer.
So you began working with Louis Perron, and
yeah, strictly as a draftsman.
And what were some of the kinds of things?
Okay, at the time, he was known in Saint Laurent. Montreal was for me a village, and it was a village under Prime Minister Duplessis. There were only one landscape architect written in the Yellow Pages, and I asked him who were the other landscape architects. They're all English, he said. They're all in Ottawa and in Toronto. We didn't talk about the West. We didn't even know where it was, the West. Very vaguely. There was a fellow by Radcliffe. I don't know if you know him. Interesting, because he was East, and he says, why must I be a member? He took me along to see the boys. I call them the boys, you see. And he introduced me to the boys. And the boys called me the designer. But I was there as a more as a friend and a company. But Louis wanted to make a landscape architect out of me eventually, work for him forever and ever. Be his right man, like Dunnington Grubb did with Stenson. Mm-hmm. Stenson was also actually a draftsman, of Dunnington Grubb. Then he married Helena, and then he died, and she took over, and she travels also to Rifla, so I knew her.
Yes. And so he, basically, you worked on the projects that he was commissioned to do?
Well, the project he is commissions were mainly in Saint Laurent and in the town of Montreal. Parks. Mm-hmm. I think there were about 12 parks. I drew them all. But they were not drawn, or as they were elegant, colorful. They were presented to the mayor and to the alderman, accepted, automatically accepted, because no one at the time could read plans anyway. They still can, but who can read a landscape plan?
Yeah. And he didn't have a lot of competition.
There was no competition.
Yeah.
But at the time, there was a movement. And I must say that movement was there was an association in Quebec, but it was an association, the Eastern towns, and I said, who are the members? These members never went there because we were maybe 12, and out of the 12, they were all French-speaking Canadians, and they worked for the city of Montreal. At the time, we had a fellow by the name of Claude Robillard. He was an engineer. There was a landscape architecture department, part of the public works. Mind you, I don't know the dates exactly, but we met. Louis Perron also was a teacher. He was professor. He took a chair of landscape architecture. He liked the word. At the Beaux-Arts. And the students were continuously teasing him because he had a cigar, and one day the students came in with all the students with one cigar, and the classroom was. He was not teaching the right thing. He was giving them Renaissance, Beaux-Arts type of gardens that you see in your book here at the beginning. Where is it? Very old, like this,
Yes.
Villa Marie Medici. That's done. Well, that was his style. Louis Perron had a style. I took the style, but it was actually green ink or green painted. This is what they call la vie, watercolor, they call it. I did a lot for that for Louis Perron. I still have a few of these drawings on my archives. Matter of fact, I'm working on a project which I will talk to you about after this meeting.
Okay.
Very interesting.
And so he taught
He taught there,
an
and
old-fashioned kind of style.
very old-fashioned, and the students, some enjoyed it, some didn't, but they all worked. They were very obedient, the students. Mm-hmm. McGill laughed at that. He says, "You must be crazy. We're not in the past. We look at the future. We're the new boys." It didn't last long, this course, but he took in. It went on, and for about, I think, 4 years. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Something went wrong. Oh yeah, then the students of the Beaux-Arts did something, and they changed, and it became l'Université de l'Environ. What is it now? University of Montreal. No. It's called la Faculté d'Aménagement. And yes. They put the 3 professions together. 3 professions: architects, mm-hmm. landscape architects, and interior designers, or industrial designers. Urbanism came much later. Mm-hmm. We actually, at the time, in 1954, it's called the Canadian Society of Landscape and Town Planners, yes. In 1933.
You started...
In 1954, it was called the Canadian Society of Landscape and Town Planners.
Yes.
You see.
And were you, as Louis Perron was a member of the
Canadians?
Society.
Yeah.
Was there a Quebec society?
No, there was an Eastern chapter. It was the Eastern chapter, and we were the Eastern chapter of the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects and Town Planners.
Okay, and because he was a member of CSLA, were you also a member?
Well, I asked to become a member.
Yeah.
And he says, "Yeah, but it takes I don't know, all kinds of papers and all that, and you're not, mm-hmm. but you can be an associate." Mm-hmm.
So you were... But
for many years, I worked more to learn like I said, I was a Louis Perron, I was his designer, but actually I was his apprenticeship. Sure. I was an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. It was quite interesting. Private houses, private gardens, thing. motels. It started. What I was saying before, Claude Robillard was attached to the city of Montreal. They had parks too. We did the Rimbaud Park, but we were the only in private practice. Louis Perron had the rich English clientele, people like Holland in Laval-sur-le-Lac, which is a very elegant town, you know, with cut hedges and very French gardenesque type of thing. Westmount, you know.
Where was his training from?
He came from Cornell. Ithaca Cornell University.
But he's a French Canadian.
He's a French Canadian. His brother had a nursery called W.H. Perron. And he was always teased in his family and around. Are you the pépiniériste? Still now, when I talk to someone, I said, oh, you work for Louis Perron? Oh, yes, the nurseryman. I said, no, not the nurse. His brother is a nurseryman, happened to be a nurseryman. So, and he had to defend himself continuously. His brother said, go to Cornell, get your university diploma, come back, and then we'll put you in business. So he worked for a couple of years at his brother, and then he started on his own.
And was his style then, you mentioned that he taught in a very traditional style, and gardenesque.
Gardenesque.
You'd say
everything was gardenesque.
Yeah. There wasn't sort of any kind of contemporary...
he asked me to look after that. He says, I'm going to change all that. I'm not going to make straight hedges anymore. I'm going to make round hedges. He says, do one for me. And I did the first one for Mr. On Devimy Street, a very modern garden, a la Egbo, I would say, a little bit.
Yes.
And the client liked it because it's different. And Louis Perron said to me, he says, well, that's a new generation, I guess. You're going to make more modern gardens? I said, yeah, we're going to use other things. We're going to use Domtar brick. What? No, we have only 18 by 18 blocks here. No, we're going to use railroad ties? You must be kidding. No rug gardens anymore. Little retaining walls. And I started that way. He liked it so much that he proposed to me at the end of 54, he proposed to me to become his partner. And actually I was nominal party to him. It was called Louis Perron and Alfred de Vynck, Architects and Urbanists. Officers were in Côte des Neiges. And it's there that I trained these people that were at school, like Douglas Harper, the director, the founder of the School of Architecture, landscape architecture in Quebec. Douglas Harper, that started with Georges Daudelin, professors and all that. And these people worked to make a living at Louis Perron. And Louis Perron says, this is my chief designer. He was always teasing because I had to look at the drawing and I said, that's all you can do, boomerangs? Don't tape that, please.
And he wasn't even Australian. What was the inspiration?
They were not designers. They came from schools like Buffalo, I think, somewhere. There's a school. The Canadians went down. The Canadians, like Austin Floyd, all these people, they were trained in Boston, I think. You know, MIT. You know, very high, elegant schools, and Harvard and all that. You know, and when you said you came from Harvard, you had to be good. You know, I'm not too sure about North Carolina, Raleigh, but ASLA. But you know, after all these years, you get acquainted to what's going on and all that. And every year, meeting here, it was in Quebec or in Ottawa. Quebec, Ottawa, our meetings, and it became a little bit more popular. In 1959 came, that's after 4 years, came Jack Vincelli, Douglas Harper, Petit, Graham, and myself, and a few others. We were associate members. And I believe that in 1963, I became a voting member. Those days, you had an associate member. It takes 4 years to be an associate member. Then after that, you became a voting member. You had to wear gloves and very nicely. I was examined by an examining board. Okay, I'll be very frank with you. Things weren't too... I was his partner without being his partner, Louis Perron. We had an office on Côte des Neiges. Next door were architects called Jean Gélina. Jean Gélina was a good friend of René Lévesque, the Prime Minister, the Parti Québécois. I felt already in those days that something was going to happen in 1959, that this country was going to tend to separate because there was two cultures. In my office, in Louis Perron's office, we had no French jobs. We had only English. A little bit in Pointe-Claire, but the French were not ready yet. I'm not going to in politics, but this you have to go really to become an economist to see why not this and that. All right. 1959. I go to Ottawa. Okay, Louis Perron and me, we didn't. So I was in his office, and one day we were doing a plan in Drummondville city. There were 3 tables. The chief draftsman was here, 2 tables there. We had a couple of draftsmen, French. Louis Perron at his office, and on the front door was marked Louis Perron and the Vynck. What happened is that he got started by a client in Drummondville. And when the plans were done, we went to Drummondville, we measured, made sketches, and the client came. And his contractor came one day, and he saw something peculiar happen. He looked at my drawings with his hands beside the client, and he said, "C'est vous qui faites ça? You do these drawings?" I said, "Oh, sure. Yes, monsieur," very politely. Très bien. And he left. He sent his contractor from Drummondville over there, who had more guts maybe. After a meeting closed door with Louis Perron, I was supposed to listen to this because I was an associate, but maybe in the firm they said, "Is he an associate on the, who is Alfred de Vynck?" And he came up and he took the advantage of a opportunity to tap on my arms, and he says, "You do these drawings, I was told. Would you like to moonlight? Would you like to have some work after 6? I said, "Sure, why not?" Reminds me of the story of Frank Lloyd Wright when he was working for a famous architect there, called moonlighting. Why was I moonlighting? Because I was probably less expensive. He takes my telephone and he said, "Give me your phone number." And Louis Perron, "What's happening here?" He says, "Oh, nothing, just conversation." "Okay, I'm looking at your drawings." That was his right. I don't know what Louis Perron had to say after. I stayed there maybe for another month. But on weekends, I went to Drummondville. And this landscape contractor was actually the brother of the mayor. And the mayor knew the mayor, and the mayor knew lawyers, and it was a club, golf club. And all these houses were new. And I became known there. I met Coca-Cola president, sketch. I missed sketches. They liked my manners, my guts, so I don't know, whatever. I don't think the contractor liked Louis Perron, something. If Louis Perron knew about it, I was fired.
And he did.
But we stayed friends. We didn't speak for a couple of years, and I opened my office. Where? In my apartment. Printed cards, distribution, and then I got known. And I started the office in 1962 or 63. Then my name came in the telephone book. That was the second one. Vynck came later, 3. And I have all these things now, the list of all the, big. So it was time for me to become a member, but I've never called myself a landscape architect. Alfred de Vynck, CSLA. My drawings eventually went somewhere in Ottawa, and I was called in. And then that's the way it worked. You had to wait, and the examining board got together. And who were the members of the examining board? I still remember who they were. Dunnington, who called me the designer, Floyd, private practice, and Petit, who just came in, Don Petit. Louis Perron didn't like Petit because he says, this guy's a French Canadian. His name is Petit. And he never spoke French to us. I had to show 4 works I did. Thank God I made the plans. I took pictures of the plans. And I remember still Louis Dungeon says, what did you plant here? On the picture. I said, I think it's a Mugo. Okay, you're a member. I became an associate member. We went across in Hull in a very famous restaurant, and they all congratulated me because Floyd said, yeah, but he's an associate member and he keeps going to CSLA. CSLA. Was I pushed into it? I pushed myself into it, maybe. And since then, I kept saying CSLA. Until Jack Vincelli once say, why don't you call yourself a landscape architect? CSLA, who knows that? And many clients ask me what CSLA is, the Canadian Society of Landscape Architects. Member of the, then after that I put a little M in front, MCSLA, and that was on my thing. In 1962, the urbanists came in our way, and then we erased the word town planner because Douglas Harper studied planning in Chicago or somewhere in some university in the Northern America. Where is it? The big school there somewhere. Planning? Buffalo school. A friend of mine, architect, Rotuno was the architect, landscape architect. Anyway, we were more and more approached. I was more free. I had my office. I made well, and I could travel to the United States and then start meeting other offices, landscape architects. I went to see Fortuno, New York. He was in New York, upstate New York, landscape architect, visiting sites. It was most interesting. Quebec, nothing yet. Then Toronto, Floyd was doing hotels, starting. You know, if you
You're saying that in 1963 that Canada,
well, sure, the country
was a coming of age there.
Yeah, you know, it became, especially in Quebec when Duplessis died, the Liberals came in, and the Liberals, you know, a la Trudeau a little bit, it became more. Things went easier, you know, Central Mortgage, NCC, and the movement. Of course, I was still working in my office and looking at Montreal, Drummondville, Quebec. Montreal. Where did I work? I worked in the other cities. Ville Saint Laurent, town of Montreal, Hampstead. That's my clientele. The clientele were Jewish, mostly Jewish people, but well-mannered. Benjamin, I have a list of all the clients here. It's a laugh when you know about this. You know. That's a realization of, you know, projects, Gordon Park, Drummondville, Choc Beton Factory, mountain hospitals. I don't know, people talk to each other. I knew a lot of architects, of course, because, you know, we're talking about Kotensky, Kahn, Pilon, Cohen, Deskin. These people, Schreiber, you know, across the street here, Tolshinsky, shopping center came everywhere, and there was always something to do in landscape. But for the architects, we're not landscape architects, we're landscaping. Come over for our landscaping problems. I said, yeah, we're going to put asfalto nigra, asphaltus nigra, nothing but asphalt and 1 tree in the middle, you'll be okay. No, you can we'll give you 10 feet in the front. I said, I want 30 feet. Yeah, but we need cars. La voiture, the cars. So we are cars architects, we're not landscape architects. Well, we'll give you a little space. But Quebec was very slow. We always had to go to Toronto. They're getting there because they put legality in it. It's a must. You cannot have a permit without a landscape architect. You know, everything has to be from a distance. In Quebec, Toronto was working. Metropolitan, the police getting together. They put all these little cities. We're still 100 years behind here. There still is a little Ville Saint Laurent. There's, you know, Hampstead is Hampstead, Ville Saint Laurent. Montreal is when you look at Montreal is cut in 3, west, central, and east. And then you have all these cities like Saint Laurent, forbidden to get in, you know, Westmount. 25 mayors we have on the island. 25 mayors multiplied by 25 aldermen, 670 people. They don't get along. They call it Le Grand Montréal. Drapeau, he has a right to say something. They sign. They have a police force now together, police stations, it's starting. But we still have a mayor, different mayor. The day doesn't go with the other mayor. One mayor says this. So I got away from landscape architecture and I looked at it and I said, I should be a town planner. A landscape architect in town planning, looking at, not in the detail. Well, things didn't go right and still not going right. Then came the Parti Québécois, 1967 Expo. That was my last big realization. The dream, Canada, over the arms. We had our Expo, World Expo. And there, I had a couple of jobs with commissions with the Quebec government, small things, through the architects all the time. The architect grabbed the project and then gave it out as a consultant. And I was there, and Alfred was in his office, and he said, Alfred, come over here. I want to talk to you. How does that look like? I said, it's what? As a commission. I said, I'll take it. I'll prepare your contract. I said, what am I looking at? You're going to be in charge of Macaipia. Okay. As what? As consulting, as our consultant, because you have an office, right? You're not going to be an employee, but you're going to replace a fellow, I forgot his name, that is very busy making a school against Toronto. He's Ryerson Institute of Landscape Architects. That was also a big something over there. You know a little bit about it?
Well,
Ryerson Institute.
Going,
They're giving diplomas, but the CSLA says, no good, we don't accept your diplomas. Very nice chap, English, British. He didn't get along with half. See, every landscape architect that you're going to interview, you'll find out that everybody has a definition. And we know what we're doing. We know. Some don't like the title. Gauchon never liked the title, architect. Gauchon, he was the chief landscape architect of the city of Montreal. Never liked the title. Because we always tease, hey, the landscapers, come over here, What was your problem? Well, can you fill in this hole here? Says, we're not, well, okay, well, put a couple of maples and say, bye. We want to be. That takes. So
Calvert commissioned you to do what?
Well, he made to be a project architect. I have the copy of it always. It's a big book, there's even papers of Stenson and all. To be a project coordinator. So that was the best year of my life. To be in an office and to be a little bit superior as an architect. Because the architect came to me. He says, this is our proposal. And I said, that's terrific. Now make a landscape plan. He says, what is it? I said, well, make a landscape plan. And they come in the briefing room. The plan would come in here. I would look at those things and I say, yeah, but where are your levels? And I didn't have to meet him. I put my red pencils, levels, please. What is the grading from here to there? He showed plans. I said, that's okay. Plans are okay. Now, give me grades. You can't put a tree there because there is a pipe coming through there. So I had to tell all the engineers and the architects, put all the same scale so that I can put one, overlay them and see if anything goes, Sure. They didn't understand that too well.
What was this for?
Well,
was this for Expo?
Expo 67.
So you were the project coordinator
for only Macaipia. Project planning was actually, I think, the landscape architect of the whole site. Okay. Oh yes. Oh yes. Macaipia was given to Douglas Harper and Lancius. Oh, I don't know John Lancius.
Yes, John.
You know him? Yes. And big tall fellow. And they both came in my office when I was not at Expo yet. And there they took me, say, Alfred, we need a sketch of Macaipia. Just make a very fancy sketch, which I did, for a fee, of course. And with that sketch, they presented it and they were accepted. So I call myself a sketcher, a designer. Yeah. And they loved it. I did it for I did towns, just plans and just sketches. These sketches are important if you can sell your stuff. Of course, I was in the middle. but I was recruited after by Expo. Funny, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Douglas Harper asked me to be part of, make an office. I said, where are you going to be? Where are you going to be your office? My office is at my house right now. He says, well, you have to have an office. So he went from one office to another, and he was taken in by LeGeyt. LeGeyt is one of the first, and Bejean, I call them the club of the urbanist, that got away from they were never a member here, but they formed their own little club. And they took, in 1963, they went to the government and they say, we're 6 urbanists, we want to close our name. So the grandfather's class came, and they came to me and says, would you like to keep the name? Yes or no? You have the right, you have your grandfather's class. I said, how many titles do I need? No, landscape architect is fine. It's already difficult enough. I keep the title, but I won't keep the title urbanist. Now it's closed. After so many years, what happened is that, and is it sad? Is it good? I'm not a political. I don't want to be political. In 1967, de Gaulle came in Montreal and said, le Québec libre.
Vive la libre Québécois.
N'est-ce pas? Okay, we knew that he was not very well accepted during the war. Was it his way of saying, now this time he was not invited by Churchill, was left out a bit, the king. He was in England, he was during occupation, but he was not accepted as a corps armé because Air France was Nazi, Pétain.
So this was his.
By the way, during Pétain time, the landscape architect in France made their title recognized. And no one could say a word because everybody was more worried about not being shot.
Yeah.
This opportunity, they took it away from them. But who got away with it? Les architectes d'intérieur, the interior architects. So there I am. Not me, but Jacques Vincelli, Louis, we're all part of all this. We don't talk all the time about landscape art. We talk about the system. Because to be a free designer and to make beautiful things, which is our art, to beautify the country and make it livable and fight continuously, we were part of the political system. And there was a political system here, the liberation of Quebec. Because that's what the bombing came, Trudeau came in power, he put the army in here, they killed Laporte, they murdered a few other people, and you never know how he was murdered, but this is not my point. Leave that to the police. But things went on, it was to the point that I was going to leave. And Louis was, no, stay, don't worry about it. Nothing is going to happen. But he came in power. And then things became sour, I think, But the whole thing is that you're interviewing me now, you're interviewing an old guy, but the young generation, I think you should cut it. Because I don't know if you go political here. Because I'm getting very nervous about it. You cut it out?
No.
You cut it out, eh?
No, I want to ask you though, just when you're saying that.
Am I still on this?
Yeah. The interesting thing that I'm hearing you say right now is that in 1967, it was a very interesting time because on the one hand, there was the energy and the excitement of Expo, and on the other hand was the deadening influence of René Lévesque and the Parti Québécois from your perspective. How did those two things ever kind of work together for you? Because you stayed and you've worked all those years and you've been successful, so you must have made something work from that.
Well, all of a sudden, I got a lot of French Canadian clients. They became more, shall we call free? I don't know. Saint-Lambert, Drummondville, Laval, cities that were actually. It's an island as big as Montreal. It was nothing but flowers. You sell flowers in Laval. It became a town planning thing. Soudrelat, LeGeyt, Bejean. All these people were the urbanists. They're the one that actually excited. They went to cities. They worked very hard, those people. And Bejean was actually a landscape. I don't know how he got in as a landscape architect. You'll ask him tomorrow, but no one knows. But you know, I still can't figure it out. But he's an urbanist, and he was one of the grandfathers. He was the grandfather.
So that energy of the urbanists also opened doors for you as
to the landscape architects.
Yes.
And the funny part is, after we're 96, that was in 1967, nearly 30 years later, all the landscape architects here now, coming out of the university, are all working for urbanists.
Isn't that an interesting?
So I said yesterday to an urbanist right here, he has a big office, I said, maybe we'll come back to the Canadian Society of Landscape and Town Planners. Because the town planners are employing, I don't know how it is in Toronto. I got the last report of the Association des Architectes Paysagers du Québec. There's not a word in English, of course, here. And I ask even the president. He says, "Are there some English people?" I said, "Well, we don't do anything about it." But you see, the architects. I don't know if anybody reads in the rest of Canada, but this is Canada. After all, we're even in Quebec, still Canada. Architects.
This month, anyway.
Corps professionnel, défavorable. They don't want it. Favorable. Urbanists, they want us. They want us in. The architects don't. Engineer, they don't want to say anything. Sciences appliquées, forestier, défavorable. Everyone is défavorable. Arpenteur, favorable. So the only people that want us favorable for our title is the engineers and the engineers and the arpenteur géomètre, which I was. No, surveyors.
Oh, yes.
Land surveyors.
The first one wasn't the engineers, it was the urbanists, wasn't it? You said engineers, but did you mean to say urbanists?
The architects are actually deferral to,
Yeah, and the engineers know, but
they don't say anything.
Oh, they don't say.
Because they don't know. There's too many engineers, actually, anyway. There's engineers, I don't know, today you can be an engineer in plumbing or something. I don't know how many engineers in forestry.
So the engineers and the urbanists are more or less in agreement, and the surveyors.
And surveys, yes.
Yes. In agreement with what?
With the title.
With the title of using landscape architect. That you can have that title. Now, you were a founding member of the
yes.
Quebec Association.
Well, what happened is Louis Perron called me and he says, before the let's go and make something. Let's go together in 1962 quickly before we went down to the city, to the court, and we registered the name l'Association des Architectes Paysagers et Urbanistes de la Province du Québec. And I have the original in my office in 2 languages. I think I have the English, Louis Perron, in the archives have the French. I'm in touch with the archives today to get this all out in the open. But no one knew about it. We did it, he and me. In the meantime, I wrote letters to the Governor General. I got nice answers. Yeah, get together. I went to see my gang, and I said, let's form a big association in Quebec. Ontario is in, so let's La Province de Québec. Says, okay, we'll do it. And then I was too busy, and Douglas Harper and Gascon and a few other people, Scaps, I think, went, and because it costs, I don't know, it costs a fortune, these things. And I said, look, you look after it. I have no time to fool around. I'll be there to second all that, Louis Perron too. And we formed the association. But that was an association according to the third company. It was just a company, like an Inc. Incorporation. It doesn't have anything. Many years later, came an act in 1974. I took this one with me because it's an archive, so I don't want to leave it with you. You may have a copy if you want. In 1974, where are we actually? We're in 63, 62, 64. I got my certificate signed by Don Graham and Francis Blue. Yes. Number 125. I don't know where they got this number from, but anyway, it's a number.
That's a CSLA.
CSLA certificate. Yes. Yeah. And that's it.
Now you were going to say about...
No, we were, then something happened with the CSLA and the APPQ, but we were still under. There was only CSLA, and I don't think there was an Eastern chapter. There may have been an Eastern chapter still, until '66. I got a certificate from the APPQ, l'Association des architectes paysagistes de la province de Québec.
Yes.
And I got number 33 in 1965, and it's signed by Gascon and Warner Goshorn. Goshorn is the fellow, an American, that was the head of landscape architects over here.
And now you were saying in 1974.
No. 1966,
yeah.
Not much happened. Well, Expo, the political system, the change of this, and the language. The sacred language, the culture. It starts. The trouble is going to start. The English are moving out slowly, slowly. Go to Toronto, close their office. I was in an English milieu. The best architect was called Monsieur Russell Edge. He was with Chadwick, Pope and Edge. He's in Toronto, he died. Called Monsieur Le Bord. Edge, Le Bord. On the edge. Landscape the architects divide. We, the landscape architects, we were nothing, not very much. We were just working. Working. Working what? What? Canada. Central Mortgage came in those days. And then they formed an office here, and they said, we're going to give loans. Trudeau, build anything, we'll give you loans. Central Mortgage.
I think that's why we're in the shape we're in today.
Junk, exactly. Anything. But there was a little guy by the name of Frigeau, who's blind now, and doesn't want to hear anything about it anymore. He was a member. He got in by an urbanist who was the head of the Central Mortgage. The promoters came in from Saint-Jean, from Brossard, from Hull, from Wiena, from Aylmer. My office couldn't handle it anymore. I was the third. Louis Perron was not so hot. And I said, yeah, but now, fini les sketches. We don't make sketches anymore. It's not anymore the good old days. Now we have to make good plans with details, show everything very hard to make the landscape kind of confused because they can't read. They're all Italians. I have very much respect for Italians, but you still don't know. They don't know what a contour is. Mm-hmm. For them, a contour is like this. They would do this. Mm-hmm. It was very funny. So the plans were refused at Central Mortgage. Every promoter, from Roger Pilon to Belcourt, they bought tracts of land in Dollard des Ormeaux, in Brossard, built little houses, and came in cities like Campo Corporation. And I did the fine buildings in Montreal, 3 in Westmount. Everybody got loans. It was, you went to the bank, here's my plans, architect, fine, very good. They went to Central Mortgage, we'll look at it, we'll pretty okay. On one condition, I get a landscape architect. What? There's only 4 landscape architects in Montreal. What is this? A union? Mafia? What is this? And he came to my office. I looked at it and I said, yeah, but the building should have been this way. Yeah, but you're late for that. Why wasn't I in the beginning? And say to edit stars. It was fun. While you hide it with a bush, all the mistakes, a lot of mistakes happen. You can assure you. And then you said it yourself. I didn't say it. That's why we have to. It's a mess.
Yeah. I wonder what
Ottawa's the same. Yeah. Terrible.
I wonder what the reason was that CMHC required a landscape plan. Do you think that had anything to do with Humphrey Carver?
Could be. Well, sure, Carver, yes. Yeah. It comes back. Carver, wasn't he? What was he?
I think he was the head of CMHC.
Well, Carver, sure, no, I met him.
So that was very far-sighted.
He's the guy.
That they would do that.
And so late.
Yeah, but that certainly ensured the employment. Now, did you have to stamp those plans?
Yes.
And
that's why
you needed a number.
And an association. Now, the stamp, for some people, for me, it has no value, but it looks good, on a, and it. Well, some people stole,
You didn't need it because you had the reputation.
Project planning.
But
Yes.
other people who don't have that reputation would.
Then
want
came
that.
project planning came in, a German chap, who formed his own association. Big fight with Don Graham
Yeah.
at the time. That I called Don. I said, "There's a guy. He wants me to become a member. Oh, you stay with the CSLA. Well, you're Canadian." I said, "Sure,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be." There was continuous fights. It became a business. It became business, a dirty business actually.
Mm.
I could show you, Linda, some of the jobs. You will close your eyes. How is it possible that these things were given out in Outremont?
Mm.
Architects took over. They did it themselves. It's sad.
Yes.
Very sad.
And especially sad when there are people trained that are not benefiting from that work. I mean, they're there, they've been trained, they should be doing that. It shouldn't be something in the hands of.
I don't know exactly. I don't know how it is in other provinces. Is it the same? I doubt it is approximately the same.
Yeah.
The Ottawa, there's a nice side to it, but there's an ugly side to it.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen in where my daughter lives, some side I would condemn. It's just unbelievable. Houses one on top of another, and lots of land. They have another, parkland. Yes, there's parkland, but highways. Anyway, but still better than here.
Can
Here
I ask you just maybe for I don't want to really get too much off the track.
Yeah, because we may go in details, and that's not the idea.
Well, okay, but I would like to ask you from your experience so far with the founding of the society here in Quebec, your connection with the CSLA, the work that you've done, the experiences you've had. Where do you see landscape architecture going in the short term and kind of the long term future? Do you see a direction that landscape architecture is going, or perhaps where they should go?
Okay, we're talking about landscape architecture. We don't talk about landscape architects. What was our position in 1974? And that's became critical because I was I was working but I was also involved in the politics because I was vice president. It's important to tell you this because one evening in 1974, I got a phone call at 6 o'clock in the evening from a fellow. Matter of fact, he died not long ago. His name is Amel. He says, "Do you know you have no right to call yourself a landscape architect anymore?" I said, "Since when?" I said, "Well," I took it easily. I said, "Well, then let's call ourselves landscape designers. We'll call ourselves," in French, I say jardiniste, which is the term in Belgium. And my house was in Beaconsfield those days. And I went to bed and I started thinking about it. And I called Louis Perron and I said, "Do you know about this?" I said, "No." I was vice president, I think. I was vice president. And that's where I got into the politics. I was vice president, and the next morning, or the same evening, I called Danielle Outabou, who is actually a teacher. You know her?
I know the name.
Mm-hmm. And I said, "Danielle, il y a quelque chose qui se passe. On n'a plus le droit de s'appeler. De quoi parles-tu? What's happening?" I said, "I don't know. I'll find out tomorrow morning." And the next morning, I got up and I went right to the Order of Architects across the street and said, "What's happening here?" That's what there's a law that says no one can use the word architect anymore unless with or without a name. This is the act. Yeah. With or without a name. I said, "My God." So I think I was secretary treasurer, and I was to become vice president by Amel by general election. We called a general meeting. You can do that, and we were 1/3, and we we call our lawyers, and the lawyers happen to be the same lawyers as this. Now there is something there. I don't want to go into this now, but I will eventually, because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It says you have exactly one week, because it's going to be in third reading. Now, you know, in the Parliament, Senate, you have to, first meetings, that was written, blah, 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 no one, blah, 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 you know, a month later,
Third reading.
no one read it, but someone must have known it,
Yeah.
and said, let's call Alfred, he is going to fix you, for sure. So I called the general meeting, I called the people responsible, we formed a committee, so I was part of, and the next day, I was at, Tétro was the president, we sat down, we changed hands, Mr. Sauvé, my partner, became president, and then he's very good in legal aspects of our titles and all that. We went there, and he says, I sat down, I was asking the question to the president, Monsieur says, what's happening? He says, well, I don't know, but someone must have put in 1936, no one can use the name architect, comma, unless he's a landscape architect, comma. He said, who can that be? And you know who that person was? Todd.
Oh, yes.
From Olmsted. Frederick Todd was the landscape architect. He was working here. And he had connection with the architects. And he was also he was very well known. He was a gentleman. He was doing the church of l'Oratoire Saint-Joseph, St. Joseph Boulevard. There your monsieur knows more about, not the details of the way I say it. Jacobs knows a little bit more about what happened. Olmsted, and Olmsted came to Montreal, but he never came to Montreal. He sent Todd. Todd was the fellow that made this mountain. It was a big thing to have a mountain. What? It's a cemetery, the mountain. No, we're going to plant trees and flowers in the front because depression. And that saved the mountain. Fruit. You never read about this. That's another thing that, well, I will look into. Because I will stay here and give out. And that's my second project.
Good for you.
Maybe with your help. Because I have to go and get the money from somewhere. So
they could use the word landscape architect after all.
Well, what happened is that we made an agreement. We had our last money in the bank from Quebec Easter. Yeah. We gave it to them, to the lawyers. We were poor, flat broke, but we had time to prepare the memoir. Prepare yourself. So I remember Routabou said, Mission came. He said, give me some pictures of jobs you did. Yeah, but they're no good. Don't worry, people. We just stab them in. We're going to send it. It cost us $3,000 in paperwork that no one reads in the Senate. What is this? Landscape architect business. So the architects fights. They said, okay, listen. You can carry the name. Only the people that were landscape architects before the 1st of February 1972 have the right to call themselves landscape architects. Well, I was in 1954, I'm okay. But all the rest, landscape architect, don't call yourself landscape, you pay $200 fine. I think Peter Jacobs, I'm not sure if he can call himself a landscape architect.
And that's
so you have to watch this, because you cannot call yourself a landscape architect. If someone from across the street reads this, you'll get a letter from the lawyer.
And that's still true today.
Yeah, the law didn't change. You see it again. Read this, it's all in Francais. And but I don't think our present OEQ president is going to submit it to you. Reconnaissance statut provisoire chez au Québec, 74 à 93. It's finished. They're not going to go anywhere. Now your question is, what is going to happen to the profession? So the architects say this. First of all, what is a profession anyway? It's always the sacred profession is la garde du public, the public, the saint public. We have to protect the public. The public don't give a hoot about. They care about the doctor, yes, because the doctor has a scrap nail, it opens you up. With a landscape architect, what kind of, he's an artist. NCC, where I'm applying actually for is at the Arts Council.
Yes.
And I was very well admitted there. The only thing he says, Mr. Dennison, what do you consider me as a landscape artist? An artist. Architect? Artist. You artist. You're not technical. You're artist. Les artistes. Interesting.
So how can an artist protect the public?
Never. There you go. So an architect, of course, they pay $600 a year's tuition or something. They can protect each other. If a building falls, But if if a tree falls on your head, well, that's too bad. The landscaper will not. He'll blame probably the city hall. He says, well, an act of God or something. I'm just saying. Okay. But we could make a point. And I think this is what we have to make a point. Do we need landscape architects in this society? Do we really need them or not? And this is a question that you have to ask the public. The architect thinks, yeah, interesting, but don't call yourself architect. Keep gardening, but don't call yourself architect. Don't use the name architect. Yeah. And I said that to Poulain, who was actually the vice president. I said, mais pourquoi? Qu'est-ce que vous avez? He says, because anybody can call himself a landscape architect. The first guy who takes a truck, put landscape architect, he is a landscape architect. It was true. Anybody could call himself a landscape architect. He says, if I call myself a jardiniste, gardenist, he says, you're okay, do it. You get your papers right away. But the school don't want to. It's too late. We're known. We're in it. So we have to show Toronto, the United States. We have to show all the things. I may give you a copy of the book. That book has been disappeared. I don't know how. It disappeared. 300 copies disappeared? Where are they? I'd like to know. Sauvé did a wonderful job. I signed a couple of proclamations on that as secretary. Sauvé was the president. Because Rouletabille couldn't handle it. So we needed people in private practice. Sauvé, thank God, was in private practice. I was in private practice. We could only private practice people to save our profession, which is normal. Now, to form according to the law in Quebec, if you are, they'll recognize you on one condition, that you have inspectors and this. They'll cost a fortune, because we don't seem to be able to define ourselves, and we don't seem to be able to tell the public that we are people who are needed. He said, no, we need contractors. We need people, cut the grass and put a few flowers here, and that's enough. So you see, that's gardening. I don't know, landscaping. Where we are now, I don't know anymore. In 1983, I gave up. I was so disappointed about the whole thing that I moved with my family to Europe. You see it there.
You said it politely here. You said you took a sabbatical.
It was actually a sabbatical, because or else,
And when you came back?
Because people said, why are you going? I said, sabbatique. Well, I came back because my daughter couldn't stand bilingualism in Europe, in Belgium. They also have the same problem. But they solved the problem since '84. Now the country is divided. English, French. We still have a little bit of problems with the Irish and the English. And it's going to be a bomb. I don't know if you have to take this, but still fighting.
Yes.
That's a religion.
Yeah.
Also probably language, culture. So everything is culture. Now what's going to happen here in Quebec with us, the landscape architects, I don't know. I can see one thing. At the moment, most of the landscape architects are employed, according to my research, are employed by urbanists. That's not good for me. I don't want to be part of an urbanist. I want to be myself. I want to be a leader. And when I have a chance, I'll lead it. Yeah. In IFLA, in Brussels, one guy says, very important, Simons, I think it was, architect in Philadelphia, he got up and he says, it doesn't really matter what we are. We have to be leaders. That you're a landscape or an architect, if you convince a promoter or a city to make beautiful Philadelphia boulevards and Washington and become like Grébert in Ottawa and L'Enfant in Washington, let's have the Vynck maybe in Montreal. What do you need to do to change this here? Well, you need to be read a dictatorship. I really don't know. Politics. And all our boys here, what they do, we're all there.
Maybe you've said it right there. Maybe landscape architects need to be more political. Maybe they need to be in that realm in order to effect changes that can then help.
And Monsieur Sauvé, that's what he said. Il devrait y avoir un politicien in landscape art, or someone sensitive to it. But we're a long way from there. So we're in the hands now of people with good taste. We do work for people that think that we are, that read, that would read this,
Yes.
that have a good estate, probably maybe with influence and money, of course, because I think botanical gardens, the landscape architects employed by them in the city of Montreal, they do wonderful work, but the money doesn't come from a private. It comes from the public. So we're in the hands of, and the public gives the money, and then also they see changes in streets, paving and little flowers that everybody is going kaput, breaks it, and people are not. It's an education. You have to start from school. The love of the flower, the respect for plants. It's everything is education. Go to Europe and say what a landscape architect is. They know. But here they still don't know. They ask you if you have a nursery. And if you have.
If you have, at least you're able to make a living. That's very sad, though, because other people that I've spoken with across the country have indicated how important it is for landscape architects to be team leaders, to be in charge of teams. For instance, you're saying that landscape architects here work for urbanists. Well, other places, the landscape architect is in charge and the urbanist would work for them. The architect would respond to them. The landscape architect is so trained that they can be the visionary. They can be the person that sees the big picture and then help all the other little pictures along to help form that.
Landscape architect in the United States, Kenneth Lynch, explained it in his book. And another book I have on surveying, landscape architect could be the leader, and he will. And I've been doing this. All my jobs I did, I made the sketches, I gave it to the engineers. This is how you should lay it out. But we come too late. How do we get in? Talk, talk, talk.
I have a do not disturb signs. Okay, they should go away. Go ahead.
I'm in the middle of it. I'm a victim of what happened from 54 up to now.
Yes.
40 years. I've seen a lot as an observer, not as an important person. Mind you, if you talk at a door somewhere and says, you know Mr. de Vynck, says, who doesn't know Mr. de Vynck? We're talking about the people that are 60 architects. I can name you the names, probably left over 25, 30 architects. You still call Alfred, how are you? We work together. But the young generation doesn't know me. They don't know me. And I feel, I don't know their point of view. Let's put it this way. I'm not teasing, but the present landscape architect president, M. Dumais, that you know, I call him l'architecte éclairagiste. He sells lamps. He works for a Vynck company, yes. You know. That's where he makes his living. He's not being a landscape architect, he doesn't do nothing. And Emission opened a nursery lately. I heard that from the director in architecture, Marsan, and the architect don't like that. Because if we keep on going like that, then we may as well forget it and become nursery people.
Yeah. And lamp sellers.
That's a question of choice. You can be excellent. Done it grew up and I shared the nurseries that were the best. I mean, I photographed their gardens. I mean, it was a gardenesque, but it was Niagara Falls. I mean, Stenson even worked in Holland. He made a superior court, you know. Okay. I have a photograph of him. I'll show you sometimes. He's going, hey, the designer, Stenson and him in Washington. Wonderful time we had there. So I stayed away from everything, but I have lots on my. I could be witnessing a lot. I could be in a court case. Yes. I witness everything. And I'm ready now to write it all down, to explain it all. Mrs. Lambert is interested in finding out. I said, time will come. I met her, I think, a year ago at a cocktail party, and she says, oh, you Mr. de Vynck, landscape architect. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to meet you sometime to talk. And I said to her, at the end, I said, when I left, she was in conversation, I said, excuse me, Mrs. Lambert, please. I'll write to you. That's a year ago. I'm not ready yet. Because first of all, I feel alone, lonesome. Who are my peers? Who are they? Where are they? Graham, he's retired too. Their children are landscape architects. Young, they live. I said, where is your work? You don't work for your father, and she works for the city hall. What kind of work can you do in the city hall? Okay, it's a job. Rest of Canada, don't know anything. When you quit, 84, didn't come back. I was protected by the title. I felt very good with that. But I worked a few projects with Louis. We did the Olympics. What was it?
76?
Was it 76, the Olympics? Oh, that was just before. When I came back, I think I was a engineer, so I educated my children and went around and showed this. I didn't go anywhere else, Toronto or no. Things. I was working on some of the projects here. I did some legal affairs, worked with this. Was a general consultant for some people. What would you do with this? And there's so much to do when you think of it. Création d'emploi. That's our Prime Minister Chrétien. That's his main thing.
Yes.
Création d'emploi.
To
What?
create employment.
Create. The employment is there. The employees are there. Masons, carpenters. They don't work. If we don't put them to work fast, they'll stay on social thing and they won't learn anything. Our churches, in the meantime, are breaking. The trees are overgrown. There is work, but no one wants to work.
Or no one.
I don't mind. I'll cut a few trees.
Yeah.
I'll accept $4 an hour. Why not? It's good for the society. And we're living now in a society of critics. That's all. We'll go together maybe somewhere, and I'll show you around. I'll make you a critic. And I think that's a good thing too. Just you have to remember what I'll tell you. So that's the history of my life. So I hope you're happy with what I said.
Well, of course, it's been very interesting. I feel a little bit sad right now. I feel that you don't really see a very positive future for landscape architects.
As for landscape architecture, yes,
Yes,
but as a landscape architect, we still have a lot to go and define ourselves in Quebec.
And once that definition is made, then maybe...
We're talking about geography, Quebec. I believe in New York or in Washington, when you're a landscape architect, you are very well, you're a landscape architect, because there are 10,000 members there. They have in Washington, I think they have an office. We have still, in Canada, we still have a PO office. That doesn't look good, you know. When you see this, when you write this to this, and you have what's your address, please? Yeah. And you have a PO box. Doesn't look good, you know. PO box. Sorry, that doesn't look good.
Well, that's a good point.
Tell you another little story. What happened to me? Still 5 minutes?
About 2.5. Go ahead.
No, I'll tell that to you.
Okay.
This is not it, but it's important.
But,
ask me about it.
Okay. But the landscape architects can make a difference.
I remember Carver. Oh, definitely, but he has to fight, and I think there should be maybe private schools in landscape architecture. You know, maybe a la Frank Lloyd Wright and so on. You know, which I did a little bit. I gave to a lot of young landscape architects, and they have good jobs. Mr. Lin, I think there's another one. I don't hear from them. They never wrote to me or thanked me for it, but they have big jobs. They're somewhere in Ottawa. This week I'll go in the offices and find out. They're looking for a landscape architect in NCC. I don't know who took the job. And the funny part is, it was funny, is that we need a bilingual man. So I said to the secretary, I said, how many calls did you get? I said, we got a lot of calls. We had to refuse them